Now, what Jesus is speaking here, and in the context of what he's saying, in John 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, we call this really the final discourse, really, that Jesus Christ has with his disciples before he goes to the cross. Remember in John chapter 13, he washed the disciples' feet there in the upper room. And then in John chapter 14, he begins with the famous passage. I know you get tired of me saying famous, but you will recognize, most of you will recognize John 14:1, where it says, "Let not your heart be troubled. Will you believe in God? Believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go and prepare a place for you." And so that promise of heaven is what he's talking about here. And then he starts talking about the things that are going to happen. And then he says, now here's what's going to happen. Here's the promise I'm going to make you. And he begins to talk about the Holy Spirit coming down and entering our life and heart and making life worth living for us and saving us. We become born again at that point. Now he's again preparing them, and he's saying, look, sorrow's going to come. How is that going to come? It's going to come through the cross. The whole world is going to be rejoicing, and he's talking about what's happening in Jerusalem as the celebration begins as Jesus dies on the cross. And he says, you're going to grieve. But when 3 days later, he doesn't say 3 days, but he says, later, when I'm resurrected from the dead, your grief will be turned into mourning. Psalm 30, verse 5 says this, joy comes in the morning. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. There's no sorrow, he says, that can overcome